Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to day 3 of 30 for 30. How are you getting on? It's a bit of a strange time at the moment. I've said that most days, I think, so I hope you're doing well, taking care of yourself and the people around you. And if everything's good, I hope you've enjoyed 30 for 30 so far. We've had a couple of good sessions. I've had some good feedback. I hope you're feeling that you're learning something and maybe just beginning to appreciate the possibilities. I love this phrase, beginning to appreciate the possibilities of what we can do using Excel VBA, because believe me, it is game changing. Can you let me know in the chat, can you see me and can you hear me? Let's get all the technical stuff out of the way. And if that's all okay, I've got a question for you today. Before I say hello to people in the chat, I've got a question for you today. So in Excel, where can we store information? Very simple question, and the answer may appear obvious, so let me make the question a little more specific. Where can we store information in Excel VBA? Where can we store information in Excel VBA? Let me know in the chat, and whilst you're thinking about that, put your ideas in the chat, and let's say hello to some people. Bjarne is here. Welcome, Bjarne from Denmark. How are you? Good to have you with us. Ahmed from Bahrain. Ahmed, let me know. Are you somebody I have taught in Bahrain? Don't worry if you're not, but I'm interested to see if you are. Lee is with us. Now, next to Lee Williams' name, next to Lee's name, you can see a little membership icon. That's because Lee has taken out a Members Monday membership with us. That means a lot to me, Lee, and I'll be trying to create some value for you in the coming weeks and months. Ian is with us, another one of our members. Welcome, Ian from Edinburgh. Let's see who else we've got. M. Mayer. Not sure what your name is, M. Mayer, but welcome. Good to have you with us. Eduardo from Costa Rica is here. Yasmina, another one of our members. Excellent member in Members Monday. Great contributor. Welcome, Jasmine. Good to have you with us. And Through GT is with us. Welcome. Gary Wilson is with us. Fantastic. Jorgen, the general's here. Make sure we salute the general. Gusa is with us. Welcome. Steve is with us from Berlin. Welcome. Jasmine is with us. And I've already said Jasmine and Ian and Jorgen. And Yulia is with us. Hello, Yulia. I'm not sure if we've seen you so far on the stream. So welcome. And Bert is with us from the Netherlands at the bottom. So fantastic stuff. And welcome. And let me know in the chat, can you see me and can you hear me? I think so, because Bjarne has come up with a good answer to our question. Where can we store information? So you can look in the chat now and get a bit of a sneak peek, if you like, from Bjarne, who's put a good answer in there. So what's the most obvious answer? Where do we store stuff in Excel? Well, we could say in the cells. Yep. Absolutely. The cells are there to store information. Just incidentally, how many cells do we have in Excel? If you hold down the control key on the PC, hold down the control key and hit the down button, we'll go all the way to the end of Excel and you can see we've got over 1 million rows there. How many columns do we have in Excel? That's more difficult, isn't it? Because columns have numbers. Let's go ahead and do this quickly. So now hold down the control key and right cursor, the right arrow, and then just type in equals column, and 2 brackets, open the bracket and close the bracket. And you'll see the column number there, which is 16,384. So we've got 16,384 columns, over 1 million rows. That's a lot of cells. So we can use cells to store information. Where do we store information in Excel VBA? Let's get the VBA editor open here. So Visual Basic. And Bjarne has given us a little start here. Variables. One of our key components of Excel VBA. In order to be a serious programmer, we have to understand variables, but the name is problematic. As with so many things in Excel, the name doesn't necessarily describe what the thing actually does. And the best way to think about a variable is a place to store information, a place to store some data that's going to help us with our programming, just like a cell in the spreadsheet helps us to store some information. Go ahead, I've just got a new Excel file and go insert and module. Now we've got a new module here. And one slight difference I should say at this point, we've got thousands, millions of cells. Variables, we wouldn't expect to have millions of variables. In a typical VBA program, we might have a few variables, a handful of variables. I might go up to 20 maybe. for something fairly intensive, but a variable, a place to store information. What's the first thing we write? This weird phrase that we write at the top. We're going to sort this out today. What does this actually mean? Option explicit. And then we're going to get onto our next Excel VBA conceptual building block. Exciting stuff. We've got our building block from yesterday, which is A equals A plus 1. Make sure you're writing these down. Here we go. We've got our next building block here, which is, there it is, dim x as y. What on earth does this mean? More computer programming syntax. Dim x as y. Let's go ahead, write that down on a post-it note. I hope you're doing this at home. No promotion of post-it notes. I'm sure similar products are available out there. So go ahead, try not to crash into a microphone if you have one set up. Get that on the wall, dim x as y. And we're going to go ahead here, create a new routine. Let's say var test. And then we're going to create a variable, which is a place to store some information in Excel VBA. And I'm going to say dim. Let's say, I'm going to say, sum underscore, let's not use sum actually. Let's say add underscore 1. It has to be a single word. And then I'm going to say as integer. So what on earth is going on here? It's going to get a little bit more obscure now, if you like, guys. You know, previously we've been working with ranges, very easy to understand what's going on. Going to get a little more obscure now, so we've got to pay attention. So what's this all about? This dim word is saying to Excel, listen, I need you to take a bit of your memory and to make a little variable, a place we're going to store information. So whenever we're using a variable, we have to declare the variable, and we do that using our VBA building block, dim x as y. So the x is the name of the variable, and this could be anything. What's a good way to name variables? Make it informative. You see a lot of people online just saying dim x as y, or literally dim x as y. I don't mean literally say that. Or just using A or B or C as a name of a variable. Give it an informative name, and you're going to see we're going to add things up. We're going to add things up. So let's say add underscore 1 has to be a single word as integer. And we're going to say declare variable 1 here. Now another point, make sure you've spotted that I've put an inverted comma here before declare. There's an inverted comma before that, and you can see this has appeared green. That's because this is a comment or an annotation. Excel will ignore those. Anything in green after the inverted comma, Excel's going to ignore those. These are like notes for us as a programmer to understand what's going on. So we created our first variable. Fantastic stuff. Again, we've got to be on top of the syntax here. The typing has to be 100% correct. Option explicit does help us with that. It's going to become clear what option explicit does. In this case, we want 2 variables here. In fact, let's have 3. So I've just copy pasted that. So just selected it all, Control C, and then position the cursor, Control V. We can't have 2 variables with the same name. So I'm going to have add 2. Then I'm going to have a third variable here. So Control V. And I'm going to say, let's say sum result. Again, there's an underscore in there. So this is a single word. Sum result as integer. So we've actually created 3 variables there. So if you just hit the F8 key, or you can go to debug and step into, or we can just run the routine, hit the play button. Nothing's going to happen, but Excel, I'm just hitting the F8 key now. Excel will create those variables for us. So it's creating 3 places to store information. What about all that? Okay, how's it going in the chat? Bert says loud and clear. Thank you, Bert. That's helpful for me. DC is with us. Unconventional, but I've seen information saved in the system registry keys. Not sure if that's advisable, DC. Steve says, will we be using all of those cells today, Chris? Well, we are in lockdown, so maybe, you know, it's a nice kind of way to pass the time just to type stuff into cells. Maybe not. I'm not recommending that. Just follow along with our videos. Bart says, hi, Bart, welcome. Bart's another one of our excellent members, helps me out with the membership a lot. Great to see you with us, Bart. Jasmine says, thank you. No, thank you for being with us, Jasmine, and for your membership. And Gregor's is here. Gregor's, welcome. So are you working along with me? Let me know in the chat. So can you remember what we did yesterday? What did we do yesterday? Working with ranges, interaction between the VBA editor and a range. And then we managed to sum something up, sum up the result of two ranges. We're going to do the same thing in VBA. So not using any cells at all. So let's try to do this. So let's assign a value to a variable. So I'm going to say add1 equals 3. And then let's assign a value to the other variable, Control C and Control V. So again, add2 equals, let's say 4, just to put something different in there. And then the last line of code, I want the sum result variable, the third variable we've declared. I want the sum result variable to be the sum of the add1 and the add2 variable. How would we do that in Excel VBA? If we're watching on the replay, try to work that out. We've kind of covered this. Well, we have covered the idea in previous streams. So we're going to say sum result equals add1 plus add2. There we go. So we've got a nice little computer program here. And then at the end, can you remember the code for message boxes? In the first stream, we were flashing up message boxes. So message box MSG and then sum underscore result here. So there's some new syntax here for us, particularly this. We were using message boxes before. When we were using message boxes before, we were using speech marks to make the text appear. This is different. It's a very subtle difference. This is where we've got to start being really paying attention and really working on that precision in our work. So if we have message box and then no speech marks there, this is going to give us the value of the variable. Crazy stuff. The value of the variable. I told you it's going to get a little bit more abstract now. So what's going to happen when we run this routine? Remember, code is play. We've just got to try something, get it working, tweak it, learn, do some more, getting that mode of play. So what's going to happen when we run this code? Eduardo in the chat, very good. So sum result equals add1 plus add2. Very good, Eduardo. And your syntax looks perfect there. Bart says this is going to be interesting. Let's get it dynamic. The dynamic stuff is definitely coming later, Bart. Don't worry. Yeah, Biano with message bots. Very good. And the last person in the chat, I'm not sure how to pronounce your name. I think that's a Russian alphabet, maybe. I'm working and studying with you. It's cool. It's good to have you with us and welcome. Okay, I briefly introduced a debugging tool a second ago. So you can go ahead and just run the code as normal. In fact, let's just run the code. Let's stay away from the debugging tools for now, but they're coming. Don't worry. So just position the cursor in the routine and hit the plus button here. So what's going to happen? Biana is on the money there. Steve's not quite on the money, but is Steve making a deliberate mistake? I'm not sure. Let's see. Let's hit the play button. There we go. We've got 7 popping up here. Very good, Andrew. Andrew says the message box shows the result. We've just got 7 popping up here. So in the VBA editor now, experiment with some different values. So I'm going to hit the F5 key. If we hit F5, it's going to run the code on Windows PC. So what's going to happen now? We've got 10 and 4. Hit the F5 key and we've got 14 popping up there. So 14 is the value of the sum result variable. So we are storing information. We're allocating information to a variable, getting 2 variables working together, performing a simple operation, and then externalizing the value of the variable. So you are now working with variables in Excel VBA. Talk about being a computer programmer. This is magnificent stuff. Let me know in the chat. Are you following along here? Yeah, Biana says it would be good to step through the code. Let's step through it and let's see what's going on. I think that's a good idea. So debug, you can click debug at the top and on Mac, remember, what do you do if it looks a bit different on Mac? You can just Google this. So if you Google Mac step into code, you'll be able to find how to do this. So go to debug and step into, getting out of breath there, and I can see it says F8. It says F8 next to step into. So I can just hit the F8 key on the Windows PC, hit the F8 key on the keyboard. This is a fantastic facility in Excel VBA. It allows us to step through the code line by line, really understand what's going on. So I'm going to hit the F8 key a couple of times and then just hover the cursor over add 1. Hover the cursor over add 1. That's going to give us the value of the variable. And again, hover the cursor over add 2. That gives us the value of the variable. Now, because some result is highlighted, this line of code has not yet executed. So what's the value of some result? The value at the moment is 0 because we haven't done anything with the variable by default. The value is 0. But if I hit F8 again, we're going to step through that line of code. And now we can see some result equals 14, which of course is the aggregate of the other two variables. Hitting F8 again, and we can see we've got our message box flashing up there. Let's just do something pretty cool for additional credit. And let's say the sum of the variables is, there we go. So here we've got a text string being concatenated. Concatenated is the technical word. We can just say connected or joined together using an and sign. Now the ampersand or the and sign allows us to connect together things in code. Here we've got a text string. We can see it's text because it has speech marks around it. A text string connected with a variable using the ampersand. So how is this going to read when we run the code? Hit the play sign and we can see how cool is this. How cool is this? You know, I love VBA because the feeling of accomplishment when it all works never goes away. Seriously, I always say this in the videos, and that's one of the reasons I love it. It keeps you coming back for more. I just got a little flush of excitement there when I got it working. Make sure you're feeling that yourself, and, you know, punch the air. Do some celebration when you get it working. So we're working with variables well here, and everybody seems to be working well. Yulia says you're making my quarantine useful and not too boring. That's good to hear, Yulia. 90% of my time at work I use Excel, so VBA is necessary. If you're using Excel a lot at work, you know, you really should get into Excel VBA. It's going to really speed things up. Now I know how it pops up on Chrissy's nap of the day. Absolutely rightly. That's the thing, you know, we're doing simple stuff, but as you go along, you'll see it doesn't get any more difficult than this, really. We just combine things together, combining variables with values in the spreadsheet, with loops, which we're going to come on to tomorrow or the next day. Those building blocks combining together creates beautiful synergy that allows us to get lots of stuff done. Andrew says, is it possible to store content from multiple spreadsheets in one variable? It is, Andrew. It is. I can't go through it now, but you'll be able to see in other videos on the channel. We're doing that kind of thing fairly straightforward. Bjorn makes a very good point. This can't be done. What we're doing now, this is organic coding. So we can't record this code. And this is the stage a lot of people get to. They do some recorded code, maybe make some tweaks, but they never learn the theory from the beginning. That's a real limiter with code. So if you can record some code and then pair that recorded code with some organic code, that's when you're really going to start seeing the power of Excel VBA. Okay. Let's get into a couple of things here then. What's going to happen if I'm going to change this value to 100,000 here? So that's 10,000. That's 100,000. We'll see who's really on the ball here in the chat. What's going to happen if we run this code? Any ideas in the chat? I'd love to get kind of live answers from the chat like a classroom, but there's always like a 30-second delay. So it's kind of difficult to do that. Can you see what's going to happen here? We're going to start dealing with we're going to start deploying our Excel meta skills. Steve, who's in the chat, knows all about the Excel meta skills. We have a stream on the channel about the Excel meta skills. One of the meta skills is when things go wrong, how do you react? Can you react in the right way? Part of things going wrong in Excel VBA is error messages. Error messages. And the thing about Excel VBA error messages, they're not always informative. I always say it's a bit like, you know, when you're living with your partner. Don't get me wrong, I love my partner, but what your partner says and what they actually mean can be two different things. And that's kind of the same with Excel VBA. It doesn't always get to the point about what's going wrong. And we're going to see that now, although this particular error message is not too bad. So I'm going to go ahead, run this code, hit the F5 key. Whoa, what is this? Steve says, I know more about the meta skills than the actual skills. Yeah. Well, Steve, when the skills start coming, you are going to be seriously good. Andrew says, I think the result is 1004. That's what we would have thought. Hey, that's what we would have thought. But we have got this overflow error. Overflow error, getting some very good answers in the chat here. Gary Wilson, great job, Gary. I think the integer variable has a limit. Biana too, excellent. Error, the number is too big. Interesting. So overflow, yeah. Now the truth is, different variables do different jobs in Excel VBA. The whole role of variables is so that Excel can organize its memory. So have different slots of different sizes to hold different pieces of information. I like to think of Excel's memory organized a bit like your wardrobe is organized. So if we think about the wardrobe, you don't just have all sections the same size in your wardrobe. You got your little sections for your socks. You got the big section where you put your suits and your shirts. You've got the drawers at the bottom of the wardrobe where you might put some old clothes that you never wear. You have different size sections to do different jobs. That's a good way to think about Excel's memory. When we're declaring variables, we're saying to Excel, just kind of corner off a bit of your memory to do this job. And in this case, we've declared an integer variable. So we're saying this little piece of information is going to be an integer, and integers have certain limits. An integer is going to work up to 32,000. Okay, beyond 32,000, we need another variable. We need a bigger section of Excel's memory that actually uses twice the memory, although we're not going to see that difference at this level, though later on you might begin to feel that difference. Let's look at another variable type, a long variable here. So what's going to happen now? I've changed this variable type to a long variable. If we hit the F5 key now, run the code. Oh, we've still got an overflow. Okay, of course. That's because our add one integer variable, I'm trying to assign a value of 100,000 to it. So let's change this variable type to long 2. Make sure you reset the VBA editor, hit the F5 key, and we can see we're now back to our original message box because we've successfully declared a different type of variable. Excel's gone and created that variable, organized its memory properly. It's ready for that big value. And we can see Excel is working properly again now. So 2 different variable types. What are some of the different variable types we're going to encounter? Well, we've got integer variable. Integer variable works up to 32,000, up to 32K. Long variable for bigger numbers. Long for bigger numbers. Other variables. Okay, Boolean variable. So this variable is true or false. Doesn't sound very useful, but super useful in programming. A Boolean is true or false. And let me know in the chat, what other variable types do you use? String is text. And is that everything? I feel like I'm missing one there. Let me know. Members Monday people, let me know if I'm missing anything here. Double allows us to store decimals. That's a good point, that, because integer variables, that means whole number. and a long variable is also a whole number. So you see, we've got this different types of data. In order to allow Excel to get organized and to be a good programmer, get Excel working efficiently, let's help Excel organize that memory efficiently. That's the whole point of declaring variables. Let me know in the chat if I've missed out any variables you use a lot. Bjarne says, yeah, a date could be a variable if you're working with date. Is a variable type, so we could use date if we're working with dates. Let me see. Steve says 32,000 socks. I haven't got 32,000 at the moment. Stanislav says integer won't work. We need a long variable. Good contribution. Very good. Double variable. Double allows us to work with decimals, I believe. Double and single. Somebody's saying, damn it, too late again. 4 o'clock UK time we're starting, but don't worry, you can watch on the replay. You can catch up. Okay, good. Ahmed, great question from Ahmed. So why don't we use a long variable all the time? Good question. Now, the answer, as I understand it, and I'm not a super technical computer programmer, is a long variable uses more memory. So it's slightly less efficient. So it will be a bit like having your socks and storing them in a really big drawer. You know, you don't need a really big drawer to store your socks. It's more efficient to use a smaller drawer that's easier to open and close. So an integer variable uses a small amount of memory. That's more efficient when Excel executes the code. So great question there from Ahmed. Yeah, Justin says currency. Currency is a possible variable type as well. I understand. Yeah, variant is a possible variable type. Single is also a variable type. Yeah, single is for decimals as well, I believe, DC. Correct me if I'm wrong there. Single for decimals. And then we do have variant as a variable type, but I don't recommend variant. Variant is when we're not sure what the data is going to be. So Excel will choose the best data type when we assign a value to that variable. So best not to use it because it's not the best way for Excel to organize its memory efficiently. Good. Right. Finally, let's deal with option explicit. What on earth is this all about? Option explicit. Well, in order to understand this, let's start by switching option explicit off. God, I'm getting out of breath here. Whew. Too much excitement here in my garden shed doing VBA. Let's go ahead and delete option explicit here. And then let's make a typical mistake that you might make when you're coding. I'm just going to delete a letter here. Just delete a letter. Okay, you can see that I have not spelled the variable name correctly now. And note, we're not using option explicit. So what's going to happen now when I run the routine, I'm going to hit the F5 key. And we've got the sum of the variables is 4. Now, if you find yourself in this situation, I've been in this situation so many times, you could waste hours and hours pulling out your hair, trying to understand what is going on, when actually it's something very simple. It's actually just a spelling mistake. And you can waste a lot of time through spelling mistakes in variables if you don't use option explicit, because option explicit is going to check the spelling of the variables before the code executes to check all those spellings are accurate. If the spellings aren't accurate, it's going to tell us straight away. We can go and clean up those spellings. So let's reintroduce option explicit at the top here and then play this code, hit the F5 key. Play this code and we can see we've got this compile error variable not defined. So we're beginning to get acquainted with a few VBA error messages, which is really good. Yes, this one, because we've now reintroduced option explicit, Excel is going to check the spelling for us and will tell us variable not defined. It's saying, mate, that looks like a variable, but you haven't defined it at the beginning of the routine. It's good practice for us to define all the variables at the beginning of the routine, at least generally speaking. So I can hit OK now. Then correct the spelling, put my D back in there so I can see all of the spellings are accurate, checking them against the variable declaration at the top. Just going to reset the VBA editor there, hit the F5 key, and we can see we've managed to fix that one. So there it is, your introduction to variables. A variable is just a place to store information, of course. So be clear on that. And we've got a video on the channel, which is what is an Excel VBA variable, imaginatively named. It's going to take you through this in more detail. Let me know in the chat. Are there any final questions? Yeah, somebody says object variables. Absolutely. So things like range, worksheet, and we will get some object variables going later in the course. This is good. Yeah, Bjarne says variant covers almost anything. Yeah, and you agree. I think Bjarne's agreeing with my take on variance variables there. And Steve says it's something to do with spelling in the code. Fantastic. I mean, Steve must have a unique perspective on this. A unique perspective on what we're doing here, because Steve, who's my brother, of course, and I'll tell you a little story in a second about me and Steve, but Steve is my brother and we have done live streams together. You can see them on the channel, live streams together, and Steve facilitates, but Steve doesn't know a huge amount about Excel. So Steve asks the questions and I answer the questions. So Steve's got this really funny Excel skill set where he understands some quite high level issues, but can't do a huge amount in Excel at the moment. So it's funny, Steve's contributions. So Steve kind of knows what option explicit is, but I think if you ask Steve to do a VLOOKUP formula, he'd be like, what? But he does know what option explicit is. So a really funny skill set. But Steve, if you can fill in the gaps, you could make massive progress in Excel. And thanks to Steve for supporting the channel. Without Steve, none of this would be happening. And you can go back to our very first videos in like 2012. Me and Steve made our first videos for the channel. That was good fun. And there's some funny stuff there. Lee says, any VBA books you can recommend? You know, I've got to be honest with you, I've never really used a book. And I would say that's because the best way to learn is probably through video tutorials. It's where you can be watching the video and using Excel at the same time. I know Bart's in the chat. And Bart uses some books. I would probably recommend, if I had to recommend one, probably the VBA for Dummies series. I've used some of the Dummies series books on other stuff and found them reasonably useful. Let me know in the chat if you're using a good VBA book. You know, I would recommend, Lee, obviously I'd recommend our videos. The Excel VBA for Beginners playlist, we've got 60 or 70 videos on there. It's going to take you through it from the start in a really practical way, because my perspective is always practical, because I've literally been working on VBA projects today, and the way I'm teaching it is based on that you know, experience of actually trying to deliver real world value for people. Stanislav says, excellent explanation of variables. Thank you, Stanislav. Okay. Steve says, that's my life. It summarizes my life. Don't worry. Okay, Ian's talking about books. That's good. Steve, there's also nice music in Germany. Yes, very good. Yeah, so actually, let me tell you the little story. I'm actually getting married this year, believe it or not. Yes, there is hope for Excel VBA developers. You can find a partner. I'm getting married this year. And right now, I was supposed to be on my stag do. Let me know in the chat. Do you know what a stag do is? So people in the UK will probably be familiar with what a stag do is. But we had to cancel it, of course. We had to cancel it because of what's going on currently, the global situation. So not on my stag do, but I am here talking VBA with you guys. Yeah, very happy situation, happy in a different way, but really enjoying this course. Hope you are enjoying this course. Somebody saying, can you speak a bit slower? I'll try to speak a bit slower tomorrow. So guys, really good to be with you. I hope you're learning. We're going to be back tomorrow at 4 o'clock. Take care, and I'll see you there.